I've loved space since I was probably in 3rd grade. I remember there were lots of spacewalks that I used to watch on TV, and the astronauts in their big white spacesuits and the big American flag on the side just made it look like something I wanted to be a part of. That or dinosaurs, I'm just saying. Everybody loves dinosaurs.
Tara is very loyal. She never gives up on anything. She's dependable, she's funny, she's dedicated, and she loves space.
Tara has never wanted to be anything but an astronaut and work for NASA. Space camp is something I learned about from her. I actually thought it was just in a movie, and she's one who taught me that actually you can go to space camp.
Tara Ruttley was 11 years old when she first saw the movie Space Camp. She thought that such a place couldn't be real.
We didn't have internet back then. So I would go through the phone books and sure enough, found out there is a space camp and it's real and it's in Huntsville, Alabama. So for a few years, I would send off for the catalogs and they would send them back to me with the dates and the price.
Tara expressed her wish to attend space camp to her parents, but it was more than they could afford at the time. Over the next few years, Tara's parents began saving the money to send her to space camp. Finally, Tara was able to attend the summer of her junior year in high school.
If I looked at my life like a flat line, the summer of my junior year would go beep. What it really was magical. You walked into this big building with all these space toys everywhere and you get to use them. And not only do you get to use them, you get to be part of a team that uses them in synchrony. All the kids feel the same way you do. They love space, they want to be here, they're interested. So you've immediately found your family of others who you didn't know existed just like you. It was the one thing in my life that has the biggest influence on me throughout the rest of my career, I think.
Space camp was the catalyst. I mean, that started it all. That was the best money I ever spent.
After high school, Tara briefly attended Michigan State University before transferring to Colorado State. During the transition period, Tara came back to space camp to work as a counselor alongside her now husband and childhood sweetheart, Paul, who himself was working as a counselor for Aviation Challenge.
I think it was just one of those transition periods that worked out really good for us. She was doing what she wanted to do and what she was passionate about on the space side. It was a fun time.
Once at Colorado State University, Tara continued to pursue her dreams by getting her Bachelor's of Science in Biology and her Master's in Mechanical Engineering. Then in 2001, Tara was with some fellow college students in Houston, Texas, doing parabolic flight science experiments. While there, Tara attended a job fair at Johnson Space Center.
I applied thinking, and actually got a phone call 2 days later while I was still here in Houston. There was a brand new organization opening up called the Biomedical Systems Division, and they needed someone with a biology and an engineering background. So talk about preparation meeting opportunity, that's the perfect example, and that's how I ended up at NASA.
Since coming to NASA, Tara has advanced within her career. In July 2004, she became an aquanaut working on the Nemo 6 program where she lived and worked underwater for 10 days. She also found the time to get her PhD in neuroscience, graduating from the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston in 2007. Tara now works as the Associate Program Scientist for the International Space Station at Johnson Space Center.
I work with the chief scientist for the space station program to ensure that all the research gets done on space station that's supposed to get done. It's done in a way that pleases the researchers and gets the best value back to the community here on Earth.
With dreams of still going to space herself, Tara likes to encourage STEM education any chance she gets, especially for young girls like her own daughter.
The value in encouraging STEM education and training is that you are providing an investment in our future.
And those kids come back, I want to be like her. How did she start? And the first thing I'll say, well, she went to space camp and tell those space camp stories.
To be inducted into the Space Camp Hall of Fame is pretty cool. I think I'm joining a group of really great professionals who love space just as much or more, if it's possible, than I do. Now I feel like it's really great to be honored and to be a part of that group who can help work together and keep that momentum going and keep investing and reinvesting into the programs.
She actually said what she wanted to do when we were very young, and she set out and she completed it. There's not a better person or more deserving than Tara to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Hey, and welcome to Call Center Chronicles. I am super excited. I am Juanita Coley. I am your host and founder of Solid Rock Consulting, where we help call centers implement new technology, optimize the technology they currently have in place, and build better workforce management teams. We are absolutely on a mission to normalize women in tech as well as women in workforce management leadership roles. And so we believe that starts with conversation. And so I am super, super excited to have on our inaugural show none other than Tara Ruttley. Call Center Chronicles is a place for CEOs, call center professionals, tech leaders that are looking to have fun yet thought-provoking conversation around how do we improve customer experience as well as companies' bottom line. And so I wanted to have a conversation with Tara today on how we do that, how she's been doing as far as NASA is concerned. And so I am going to let Tara introduce herself as I bring her on here momentarily. Hey, Tara, I told you I'm not the tech person, right?
You did great. That was a great smooth transition. It only felt long. It wasn't really long.
So I promise you, I told you earlier, I said, I'm going to try not to fangirl too much, but I am super thrilled to have you on our inaugural show of Call Center Chronicles, because as you already know, one of our missions is to, pioneer in the space of having women, normalizing women in tech and the workforce management leadership roles. And so I thought, who better to have on the show than Tara? I heard you talking in Clubhouse, and I was just so blown away at all of the things that you were saying. And I was like, I have to interview her. So tell us more about you, Tara, and what you do at NASA.
First, I need Kleenex. I wasn't prepared for that video. I hadn't seen that video in like 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, I forgot all those people said all those nice things about me. That's crazy. Yeah, like I've been wanting to work at NASA since I was a kid, and literally like 3rd grade. So before space camp. And one of the cool things about that video is that night I was inducted in the Hall of Fame. I was actually given my award by the director of the movie Space Camp like 30 years later. So that was really cool.
Crazy.
But yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. I have to clarify. This is your very first episode.
It is.
I'm on your first episode.
It's the very first episode. So it's going to be good.
It's going to be hard to beat. Like, I've never been anybody's very first episode. So let's do this.
Let's do it. All right, cool. So we're going to hop right in. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and then make sure that we get, I want to dig deep into some good questions that I already prepared for you. All right. So we already know that you work at NASA. So tell me a little bit more about what you actually do at NASA and what was your journey like getting to NASA? We know you've been dreaming about this since you were 3. So
yeah, thank you for the question. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I work in the Chief Scientist Office at NASA, the NASA Chief Scientist Office. His name is Jim Green, so he's my chief. And I represent all of the space station and human exploration type science that goes on at NASA in our office. So I work on things ranging from space station to the moon and even to benefits that come from space on Earth, that we feel on Earth. My journey to NASA has been super, super fun. I've always wanted to be an astronaut, and I learned really young at a field trip. I grew up in Louisiana, southern Louisiana, and I always wanted to work for NASA, and they always told me, well, then you need to be an engineer. You need to study hard, do great in math, and you need to be an engineer, because most NASA people are engineers. And as it turns out, I really liked science more than engineering, and math was okay, but I was really honestly a C student in math. It wasn't my thing. And so in high school, we took a 3-hour field trip to the Johnson Space Center, and I got to actually meet an astronaut. And I got to ask, what does it take to be an astronaut? And he told me, it's a really challenging thing. Not everyone gets accepted to be an astronaut. It's kind of sometimes luck of the draw. He said, so make sure you do what you love. Don't just do something to put it on a resume because you think it might help and it might look good, because before you know it, time will fly and you're going to want to have spent your life doing something that really, really interested you and was really important to you. And he said, and then you can apply to be an astronaut. We like happy, successful experts, and so follow science if that's what you want. So that's what I ended up doing. I went to college in science. I majored in science. And while there, I met some engineering students that helped me develop some of my ideas that I had for space. Because I was a science major, biology, right? I had all these ideas for an exercise machine in space, but I didn't know how to build one or design one. So I met these students. We got put together. We came up with some great designs for exercise equipment in space that we got to test at NASA. And when I was about to graduate, I was with my bachelor's in biology. I was planning to get my PhD straight into neuroscience, but the students, my student counterparts, actually said, you should take a detour and maybe consider mechanical engineering. Do the master's in mechanical engineering. I'm like, are you kidding me? More math. First of all, that's more math, and second of all, third of all, that's more math. And I don't, I'm not an engineer. I'm a science brain person. But they talked me into it, and so I just applied. You guys, the key here is to just keep an open mind. Sometimes others see things in you that you don't see. So one of the tricks and tips in life, if you're still figuring out, is to listen to others sometimes and don't say no. Just say yes and then deal with it later. And so I did. And that's how I ended up getting my master's in mechanical engineering. And interestingly enough, that's how NASA ended up hiring me. They wanted someone who had both backgrounds in both biology and mechanical engineer. And I actually ended up starting at NASA as an engineer. But it was a fun job. And concurrently, I worked on my PhD at the same time at the University of Texas Medical Branch. So I was commuting 30 minutes to Galveston from Houston every day to finish that degree. And I finished that on time. 2 weeks later, I gave birth to my daughter, who's now almost 14 next week. And I finished my PhD and then decided to go into space station science. So I went into the science office where I got to then meet scientists from around the world, worked with the chief scientist there. It was super fun. I got to help train astronauts on some of the science they were planning to do for space station, worked on some science communication courses, talked to the public about, why we do things on the space station, why space is important. And I did that for almost 10 years. In the process of that, though, I kept applying to be an astronaut and I kept getting rejected. So I collect the little rejection postcards, and I'm like, wow, a postcard from NASA. Yes, of course I'm rejected. But in a couple of years ago, I did get through the hardest parts of the interview. I got actually called down to Johnson Space Center where I live, and I and 10 others had a week-long interview, and I got to meet the others who were applying, and it was the time of my life. I felt like everything I'd ever done had prepared me for that week. There were no regrets. Of course, I wasn't chosen. Ultimately, there were, I think, 12,000 applicants. They interviewed 120 of us, and they only picked 8. But the 8 that they picked are amazing. I can't be mad and bitter about that because they're a great group. And I will say also the 9 other people that were in my interview week, we were all kind of looking at each other like, what? How did I get here? Like, why me? Like, we all had this imposter syndrome, right? Like, and they were like Googling each other and saying, you have a Wikipedia page and you started a business and so even the people you think should know better, like, we don't. We're all normal everyday people, and we all have this thing in the back of our head where, me, really me? Yeah, well, of course you. Why not you? Who else?
Yeah.
And so I got to meet some really great people. And so 2 years ago, I got a call from NASA headquarters asking if I would like to come work in the NASA's chief scientist's office up here to represent the space station and human exploration and research that we do at NASA at the highest level of the agency, at the administrator level. And my family was ready for a new adventure. And since they said yes, and I was ready for something new too, here we are. I'm sitting in my own mission control like everyone else around the world right now in my living room in Arlington, Virginia. But DC has been great. And that is the very long, but yet abbreviated story of how I got to where I am now.
No, that's so good. And you drop. I have to do this because the production team worked so hard on this, but you dropped so many gems. Two that you said that just stuck out to me. So I'm going to do this. It's going to be corny, right? One, you said you never say no, so always say yes. And then you also said listen to other people. So you end up getting multiple degrees, starting off in one vein and then going to another because you were able to listen and get wisdom. So you dropped that gem that I absolutely thought was fantabulous. That I have to do. I have to do the drop the gems,
This
Tara.
is great. This is great. I love it. This is
I have to do that. So sorry. Excuse my corniness.
I love it.
So no, that was so insightful. Just what you do, and then also your journey through to NASA, and then also I think what was also interesting is how you were able to pivot. I think that's fundamental and it's so key. It's essential to probably where you've been in your career and how you're still moving throughout your career is your ability to pivot. One of the other questions that I had for you is kind of going to actually lean on this question. Was you said that you had some challenging things and you've applied to the NASA program, to the astronaut program over and over and over, and you just continue to get the no, but you kept doing that. So one of the questions that I had was, tell us about one of the most challenging things that you had to overcome in your career, and how did you overcome it? How did you keep getting told no and just keep applying? And even if that wasn't the most challenging, I would love to kind of hear your answer on that.
Gosh, this is like an interview question I'm not prepared for. The most challenging part of my career. I should have a ready answer, but I really think it is this whole astronaut interview process. When you have had a dream for so long, from third grade and onward, you have to wonder if it's best that your dream gets shut down early for reasons that are out of your control to save your sanity, or is it best that you keep dreaming and hoping and dreaming and never give up? And then when do you draw the line? Like when do you decide this childhood dream needs to go? And so the challenge for me in my whole career, and in fact, mostly since that interview period, which was probably 7 years ago or 8 years ago, the last 7 years, I've been having a blast at my job. But in the back of my mind, the question is, when do you give up this silly childhood dream? And that's the voice you're always fighting with, because if you give up, you hear people saying, never quit, don't give up, never quit, don't give up. But it's like, where's reality and where's pragmatically, I should just move on, right? Move on with my life. But what if? So right this minute, I am in the astronaut application process again. And it is not for the weak of heart. It is like a year or two long period of
Wow.
like stuff. So like I'm sitting with everybody else on the edge of my chair wondering if we'll get a phone call for an interview. And I'm fighting with that voice. But the other part of me is like, well, why quit? Why would I count myself out? Let them do it. But it takes so much courage to put yourself out there and think it could be me. It could be me, when your friends or family are probably thinking you're crazy now because you're getting older, and you're the age limits for astronauts. There are no limits, but mostly they take astronauts in a certain range, and I'm moving past that range. So some have moved on, and so it takes a lot of courage to hope and visualize and put yourself out there thinking it's possible. It really, this is new to me. This is like, you could apply, but the fighting that voice and knowing when to quit, and I'm not ready to quit, is the hardest challenge for me, I think.
That's that's good.
You have to be okay with the outcome, though. Whatever the outcome is, you have to be okay. And listen, I'm like post 40. I'm not gonna. You can probably Google and find out how old I really am, but like I'm post 40 and I'm still dreaming. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. No, because what else are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
So those of you with dreams, you got to keep moving. Don't quit. If you quit right now, this is the other thing. Someone told me the other day that it gets the hardest the closer you get.
Oh.
It gets the hardest. The closer you get, it gets harder and harder. And that's when most people quit. But I don't want to be that. I want to push past it. Look at that. I love this party. I want to push past that. And why not? I've done a lot of trailblazing things before. I've done things I didn't know that you weren't supposed to do before. I mean, and it was a blessing that no one was telling me to shut up and sit down. They just let me do my thing. They didn't know what to do with me. So for those of you out there who are thinking you've got this dream to do the next thing, and Juanita, you probably know because you developed this whole Call Center Chronicles and your company, your whole big company. You could have quit. You were so close. You didn't. There are people like you and I out there that are so close. Don't quit.
Man, Tara, that's so good. It immediately makes me think about the show, right? Like, I think about how the reason I even developed the show was because I wanted to, I working in call centers, pretty much my entire career has been spent in call centers. So just a little bit about me. I picked up a book one day. I've been in call center since I was 16, 17, right? So I was a teen mom. I was working in a call center. I picked up a book. It was called Blue Pumpkin. It was a Blue Pumpkin manual, which is now the company's variant. And I was like, I think this is interesting, right? It doesn't take much for me. I find lots of techie things interesting. So I picked up the book, started reading it, and said, hey, I think I might be able to do this workforce thing. I had no idea what I was doing. But I started to configure the system and learn more about workforce management. And the further it took me in this career path, I noticed that I didn't see people like me. I didn't see, African-American women that was in the call center. Maybe we were agents, we were phone customer service reps, but I didn't see anyone that looked like me that was doing the technology or running the workforce management departments. And so it seems like the further or closer I got into leadership or the glass ceiling, so to speak, it was less and less that looked like me. And so I started working in the call centers and developing workforce management teams and learning more about the technology and all of that good stuff. And then, I started the company, Solid Rock Consulting. And one of the goals at Solid Rock Consulting is to do that, normalize women in technology, workforce management, leadership roles. And so when you say, when do you give up the silly dream? I feel like the whole time of the company, I've been like, so is today the day, because it can be a challenge just continuing to push the needle forward and push forward to say, okay, are they going to take me seriously? Do I have, enough experience or whatever? And you just day after day, you just keep putting one foot in front of the next and just continue to keep pushing forward. And I think when you say the question about, like when do we give up the dream or when do we separate the dream from reality? It's kind of like you can't, as much as I'm like, all right, I'm done with this. Let somebody else figure out who's going to normalize women in tech and in call centers and all that stuff. It's like right back in my lap, right?
This was your calling. It's you. And so why not you? But that's what's the hard thing to believe is that it is you. It's like me, like, really?
Right.
Yeah, Juanita, you.
Yeah, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. Man, that's awesome. Tell me, do you think that having a diverse program, you said something that was key earlier when you were talking about what you do at NASA. You're talking about you help make sure that the research gets done in an impactful way to the community on what's important here on Earth, And so that makes me think about why diversity is just so important so I'll ask this question. Why is that so important as far as that you're represented and what does that impact as far as the end result on what we get as a community from the research that you're doing and being diverse in that part of that process?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was actually an undergraduate in the Ron McNair Scholars Program. And so for those of you who know of undergraduates, and that program accepts minority, underrepresented, low-income, first-generation students, and takes them and prepares them to go on to graduate school to get graduate degrees. So I'm a student of that wonderful outreach program, which taught me about others and about representation and about the power of passion and capability in an individual that really wants to make it happen. So to this day, I'm still part of that community, and I keep in touch with that community, and I speak with students all the time. So I am very aware that my background and my representation matters to them as they try to relate some of the things that I've gone through or who I am with how they might go forward. And I always tell them, look, there's no right answer on how to go forward. It's all you. But in fact, for sure, one thing we're big on here at NASA is diversity, a diversity of thought, diversity of education, diversity of gender, ethnicity, race. Those things are all colorful and critical to keeping humans safe off this planet, because we're humanity. The whole purpose of the space program is to promote humanity and peaceful humanity. So not to say that NASA, is perfect by any means in their diversity. And in fact, I think we've got 11,000 engineers in the workforce at NASA, and 23% are female. So we still have, the rest of those guys, male. And of all of the 11,000 engineers, only 6% are Black, and 7% are Hispanic, and 9% are Asian and Asian Pacific Islander.
Wow.
So one of my best friends, no cliche intended, is Black, and she's worked with me for the past 10 years in NASA Space Station, and she sat right next to me, and we've had these conversations, and she has made me a better person. She's made me more aware of when I'm putting panels together that we need gender, we need color representation, we need educational representation, and she will call me and point out when it's not the case. And she will call someone at NASA and point it out when it's not the case. And she has taught me to call someone and point it out when it's not the case, or to, when I'm in the position to make those important choices, that I have a clear mind on the importance of that. And NASA's getting better at it, but it takes honestly, I'm white. It took help from my best friend who was able to help mentor me through a lot of that stuff and a lot of difficult conversations. And she's had difficult conversations. And that's the other part, right? Working at NASA, they are absolutely 100% open to difficult conversations, especially in this area, and especially in light of the civil unrest that we had last summer. We've had conversations that stemmed out of that and have made progress. So I know that as I move up in the professional chain here at work, I'm in positions to help up a fellow sister or brother who needs more representation or is an outstanding student or individual and is getting overlooked for one reason or another. I'm feeling like I'm getting better at being able to see through that, see past that, and help that individual. And the higher I get, the more I understand that it's important, and I have more influence, and when I can use it, I will.
Man, that's excellent, Tara. Like, you said so many things that I'm like, oh, I have this question. Now. Sorry.
Go for it, I know.
So listen, you said, so your friend, she helps point out to you when, the diversity is just not there, right? Yeah. You're having a panel. And so I think that's so key because, one, you have a sounding board. You have people that are in your circle that can say, hey, I call it check you, like, hey, check me, let me know this isn't right, let me, keep me honest, right? Or keep me, abreast of what's going on so that I can be a good representative, I can be a good voice. How important do you think it is to have people of the opposite, not only race, but gender or outside of your community advocate on your behalf? So, your best friend who is, like you said, African-American, to have someone like you that, would be able to advocate on her behalf, or men that are in places of leadership advocating on the behalf of women. And how important do you think that is?
That is a really, really great question, because I've been put in situations where I've had the opportunity to advocate, and I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to say or do. And I'll be quite honest. So in those cases, I'll pick up my phone and text my friend, is this appropriate? Is this the right thing for me to say or do? And they will tell me, yes, absolutely, we need allies. Advocate. So I think, as a female, if I hear a male advocating for women, like my chief and my supervisors at NASA, how they're very vocal about advocating for diversity, women and minorities, and so when I hear that, I'm like, well, that's cool. Thanks. I'll take it. I'll take what we can get. And if I get a chance to advocate, now I know. I count on my friends and mentors to tell me the right way to advocate. I try to educate myself on the right way to advocate for certain groups. And I'm still a work in progress. But when I hear it, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Thank you. And sometimes it takes some bravery. Sometimes people feel like they can't speak up to advocate if they're not in the right positions within their organization. They feel like they're going to get backlash. They're told they will get backlash. That still happens. I'm not naive. And it's an unfortunate position, but for those of us that we persevere, we that's how we grow, right? And we get, as we move up in our professional positions, I'm taking it with me. I'm an advocate until someone tells me to stop, and then I'll probably figure out why they're telling me to stop, and then I'll go figure out how I can advocate in a different way that they don't know that I'm advocating. Like, there are all kinds of approaches here.
What you said something that I think is key. You said the right way to advocate. What is the right way, or what do you think is the right way to advocate? How do we advocate for people that are maybe in a position that can't advocate for themselves? What is that right way?
I think the right way is to bring to light the right points, the right reasons. I mean, and change the narrative, change the message. It's one thing to say, yes, diversity matters here at NASA. It's another to walk the talk. And so I think the right way to advocate is to get your message in any way you can. Educate yourself on what you're about to say before you say it. Make sure you're right. I'm lucky to have friends who are also mentors in these areas. Not everybody has that. And a lot of people mean well when they want to advocate. But I say, do your research from credible sources, making sure that, you're advocating for everyone you possibly can. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be big mouth, outstanding advocate that's going to tick someone off or rub them the wrong way, right? There are a lot of ways to get it in in your email signature, in your LinkedIn profile, some of the things you may say or do at work in a presentation, who you put on your team when you get a choice to build a team. There are lots of ways that you can positively advocate, or outright, creating speaker panels on important topics as well. If you're in a community and organization that will hear that, then by all means, advocate that way too.
So I saw you in a picture. So in the intro video that we did, I saw you with John Lewis, right?
Oh my God.
So we know that, his saying is, get into good trouble, right? So you talk about some of the subtle ways that you can advocate, whether it's via your email signature, whether it's LinkedIn. What are some of those ways that you think you can get into good trouble by implementing diversity and inclusion and advocating and speaking up for other people?
Oh man. So I'm not used to getting into any trouble. I'm such a good girl. But no, I think, it's a matter of what's comfortable for each person. And then I think you can take more progressive steps. But, speaking out for the organizations that you support, not being afraid to say who you are, that'll get you into good trouble. In fact, creating something new in your organization in support of a certain underrepresented population, you might tick some people off, and it might get you in some trouble at work. But I think in the end, if it's a beneficial thing and it's impacting so many lives, then it's good trouble to get in. I have to say, I'm still figuring this one out because I haven't gotten into too much trouble yet. I'm just a nature of who I am. I'm like very much a rule follower, so I count on my my friend Avi, who was in the Space Camp video, talking on my behalf. She's a veterinary oncologist specialist. She's like a unicorn African-American woman in her field. She's incredible. You should interview her. She's incredible.
I'm definitely up for it.
She came to visit me in DC, and she said, let's go visit John Lewis. And I'm like, who? I'm like, and she's like, what? Let's go. So she to school me, and I was like a grown up, and I'm like, how did I not know this man was right here in our Congress doing these things? So we honestly got to meet him because it was her suggestion, and I would not have otherwise. And my daughter knows who he is. We've followed him now, and of course, all the way to the today. I mean, and the tragic loss that we had last year. But because of her, I'm more enlightened. My daughter's more enlightened, and we're working on paths to get into good trouble. I'm still figuring that one out. Honestly, I'm a work in progress.
I think that's the important piece, though, is progress, right? I love to say incremental success. Like, I think it's okay to be a work in progress as long as we are continuing to move forward and understand that, hey, there is some work that still needs to be done. How do we get it done? Which is why I even wanted to start having these conversations. Yeah. Tell me about another question I had was around the diversity program, or, I know you said around 23% at NASA was around, looking at the diversity at NASA. Tell me more about some of the environment, some of the culture at NASA that they've kind of fostered in order to kind of help your growth, things that they've done to maybe get more women involved. We're in, Women History Month. So tell me more about some of the environment they've had to foster, or things that they've had to change in order to create an environment that will be conducive for your growth.
Yeah. So some of the really good things that have happened at the Johnson Space Center, and I'm not sure if they happen at all the NASA centers. There are 10 centers around the country, but there are these employee resource groups that are based on, we've had an African-American employee resource group. We have an Hispanic employee resource group. We have a women in STEM. We have all these resource groups that employees can join and bond together and discuss the issues and discuss the culture at NASA, help make change. And so, for example, our African-American employee resource group just this past summer, with the George Floyd incident, stepped up and created a series of online workshops. The entire agency tuned in. And it changed. I can tell you, it changed lives. And they had a series of workshops, of difficult conversations with African-American leadership around the country and at home in Houston. And had some very difficult conversations and things that you don't hear about a lot because you're professionals and this isn't stuff we talk about on an everyday level. So I think creating empowering the employees to make these resource groups where they're connected is one thing. NASA has a unity and diversity program that we're trying to grow that encourage, that's got the messages of unity and making sure if you spreading the message of bringing into the fold into your team as many different voices and representatives that you can. That's at the agency level. At the NASA Johnson Space Center level, when I was there, diversity training was a requirement. They didn't let you go by without that. So it was a definite requirement. And what that did was opened up conversations in the cubicles to people, among each other, among the employees. And I think at least the people that I was surrounded with in the space station program were absolutely open-minded and open to those kind of conversations. And these are our friends. These are our coworkers that we're with every day, 8 hours of the day or more. So it was an opportunity to have conversations we wouldn't normally have. So I think as a whole, the agency, it enables and empowers whatever the employees offer up. To be creative enough to offer up, to create. We also do things that we have an Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity that keeps metrics on, NASA, number of NASA scientists and by gender and race, ethnicity, and, including including even the types of scientists that we are trying to recruit. We know where the gaps are, and so we do targeted outreach to different universities or different working groups or different STEM groups and organizations to try to reach out to those particular underrepresented communities. And that's an interesting thing. I have these conversations with my girlfriends a lot. How do we get, a lot of kids love, like you said, a lot of kids love space and then they grow out of it. Why is that? We don't really know, not just space, but STEM. There's lots of different reasons and it could be talked about forever. But so NASA takes pride in trying to target underrepresented groups and working hard to recruit through internships and hiring opportunities. I think we in the federal government have hiring practices that are transparent but difficult. It's hard to come to work for the government sometimes when we don't hire a lot of people. So that's a whole nother challenge in itself. But we do have an office that looks out for making sure that we're hiring a diverse workforce.
Man, that's so, I think that's so important. I was talking earlier and I was talking about this Discover commercial that I love. The Discover commercial, it matches. So there's a call center rep and then the customer calls in and the customer is, maybe it's an older lady. And so the customer service rep that she gets is an older lady that's matching the energy that she's giving. And then the next caller calls in and it's a younger guy. He's kind of cranky. He's real straight to the point though, or I don't want to say cranky. He's assertive. He's really straight to the point. And so he gets someone doing the customer service that's just like that. Like they're very straight to the point. Sorry, this is your bill. This is your amount. And so he matches that energy. And so whenever I think about or I see that commercial, and they have some funny ones on there too, but every time I think about that commercial, I think about why it's so important to have a diverse, not only workforce, because I think it impacts the customer experience, almost like what you were talking about as far as your research. The research that you do impacts what we get here on Earth as far as the end result, right? And because you're a woman, you're going to see things from a woman's standpoint, right? If we have African-American women, if we have, men, and we're going to have all these different experiences and all these different vantage points that impacts the end result, which is the customer experience and what they get, right? So if I'm a African-American female and I'm calling in for my healthcare services about a particular thing, and because you don't deal with that particular issue, you can't relate the same way as far as the urgency of why I'm calling about this bill or this provider or whatever the case may be. And so I think that's why diversity, not only from an agent standpoint, is important, but also the leadership in these contact centers and in the tech space and all those different things. I think that's why the diversity is so important. And I think what NASA is doing as far as making sure that they build an environment that's conducive to foster that growth is so important. I'm so interested to understand more about how we do that more and more in the call center industry.
It's a fantastic, boy, Juanita, what an analysis. I hadn't even thought about, I've always thought of NASA as the agency level, big picture, but I actually hadn't thought of, until you just now mentioned it, about the kinds of research that we do on station and the benefits to Earth and by different cultures or genders. I haven't thought about those applications before until you put it that way. And now I have something to go and look at and think about. So thank you for that. That was really insightful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited about just continuing to have these conversations, because I think that it's not until we start to think about, CX, so customer experience, is something that we hear talked about all the time. We hear about customer experience, customer service. Companies should have good customer service. But I think about that in terms of that's the end result, right? So everybody talks about Chick-fil-A service, right? But that's the end result. It's because they have this great leadership. They have this, they are training, and they're, like you said at NASA before, you couldn't even you couldn't opt out of diversity training. It's something that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not until we start to have more of these conversations and actually have people that are more diverse that we get, customer, CX, customer experience is just a byproduct of all the work that we're putting in,
Right. Wow.
So
right.
It just kind of blows my mind.
In the customer service industry that you're in, you're right. You've got all the different types of representation. You've got what a wide spectrum. It's everybody you've got to consider. And for us in science and the stuff that we do on station, we think we want to go to the moon, we want to go to Mars, or we want to bring benefits back to Earth. But hadn't thought about, and of course, it's the public. We always say the public. We bring benefits back to the public. Hadn't thought about the different ways and all the wide range of the public that our science serves or doesn't serve. So thank you for that. Fantastic.
Okay, I just have a few more questions, and I promise I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
Tell me, how important was space camp? So you were talking about earlier how, children, they are all in awe about space, and then at some point along the journey, they kind of lose the interest. How important was space camp, being involved in that early? How important was that to keep in, or because we know that you've been a spacey since you were 3, right? But how important was it to keeping that fire lit for you, going to space camp and getting involved so early?
Yeah, I think I went at such an impressionable time too. So it was high school, and when I went, I finally met my tribe. Like, no one I knew before knew anything about space. None of my friends cared. They were doing other things or whatever. So I just knew I wanted to go into space. And so when I finally got to space camp, I met my tribe. So I think at that point, it validated what I was thinking I wanted to do. It taught me more, and it gave me more resources about learning what the next step should be. I needed to go to college, even though I would be the first in my family to go to college, and what I needed to probably major in. And it got me thinking about my future. And these are people that I'm still in touch with today, too. So, and not all of them went into the space program. They were there for other reasons. But I think the importance, and if you're a parent of a student, I think the important thing you need to try to do is, you may not understand what their interests are. Like, your kid is interested in something, like my kid is interested in being a pastry chef. I don't even bake. I know nothing about that. But I'm trying to figure it out and finding these opportunities to give her the chance to. No, it's not even STEM. I mean, I guess it could be argued, but it's a totally different world. So I try to give her the opportunity. So give your kids the opportunities to immerse them in. There are online courses, there are YouTube courses, there are real life hands-on summer camps. Just be on the lookout for anything like that, even if you don't quite understand it. There are lots of inexpensive options these days, because back then we had no internet and we weren't connected, and there weren't many options. But these days there's so many options to get involved in whatever it is that your student is interested in, and just support them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll, just transparent. I have to myself even, do better with just kind of with, like I was sharing with you earlier, I have all girls, 3 girls, and their interests are so wide ranging that I feel like I'm like from one end to the spectrum to the next. I'm like, I'm yo-yoing all the time. So I think it's so interesting to, I was listening to your story earlier about how your dad was like, that was the best money he could have ever spent sending you to space camp. And so I'm always like, oh, my kids are so wide ranging. I'd be spending all kinds of money.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. And the other thing is, places like Space Camp offer scholarships. I think the students don't think that they would be accepted, like get a scholarship, like why me? And so they don't even apply or don't even try. There are so many organizations that want to give money to these students and want to reach students who couldn't otherwise afford it. So all you got to do is if ask, send an email and ask. It may not be publicized on their website, financial aid or assistance or whatever, but just send an email and ask. I mean, don't count yourself out.
Absolutely. So last question, and then I'm going to let you go. Tell me, what would you? No, it's an easy one. It's actually an easy one. It's not a deep, thought-provoking one like some of the ones that we've talked about earlier. So the movie Hidden Figures, I thought that it was just, I watched it like 5 times. I loved it. But I didn't know who Katherine Johnson was before I saw the movie. So tell me, what was your thoughts about Hidden Figures as well, especially being at NASA? How close, is that environment to what we saw in the movie? And then also, how important do you think it is for us to have more movies like that where we're seeing, again, you said something earlier about visualizing yourself there. So I think the movies help visualize, hey, that this is possible. So tell me, one, what was your thought on the movie Hidden Figures? And then how important is it to have movies like that?
So I think it's an interesting thing because more than the movie impacted me, the friend I was sitting right next to, my best friend, African American, in the cubicle next to me, I was seeing it through her experience. So I got like a personal one-on-one, almost line by line experience. Like we did not go to the movie together, but we had lots of conversations about it right there at NASA. And she is literally a hidden figure. There's not, like, again, the stats on African American females in engineering at NASA are ridiculous. So I don't even know, she could tell you, but they're like 2%. It's really even, yeah. So seeing it through her experience was more rewarding than watching the movie, but not everybody gets this experience. But for me, because I work at NASA, because I was able to meet a friend, my friend who's African American female, living it through her experience was more important. And I saw all of the organization that she did. She leveraged that movie to organize more events in NASA, open up more eyes at NASA and external to NASA as well. And she was recognized a lot for that work as well. And I took my daughter to see the movie, and my daughter and I have had conversations. We need more like that. I'll tell you a quick story. I was on a plane ride reading the book after the movie, and this guy sitting next to me just couldn't stop talking to me. And as it turns out, he was a drummer on the plane. And I said, well, who are you a drummer for? He's like, Charlie Pride. I was like, the first African-American major country singer? What? He's like, yeah, Charlie's up there, at the front of the plane. And he just was talking his head off. We got to talking. I gave him my book to give to Charlie Pride before I got off the plane, because I'm like, I don't know if he's seen the movie, but you've got to pass this on to him and read it. So I just was like, the universe gives you what you need when you need it.
I love that. I have to do it. The universe gives you what you need when you need it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, tell us where we can find you, find your book, find out more about you, all things Tara.
I don't have a book, but you can find me just by Googling me. You'll find me at I'm, sometimes I give presentations on Clubhouse occasionally. If you're on Clubhouse, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my website. I have a website, TaraRuttley.com. You're welcome to send me an email. I love hearing from people, and I'm happy to help in different situations wherever I can. And you can find me at NASA. Just, I'm a federal employee, civil servant every day, very approachable, and happy to talk to whoever wants to hear about space.
Well, thank you so much, so much, Tara, for joining me today. It's going to be hard.
You are a mistress of interview. This podcast is going to be so great. I'm going to watch them all. I'm going to learn a thing about customer service too in the process.
Thank you. That is the goal. I want to, our goals is customer service is such a behind the scenes thing that I don't think we talk about it enough as far as the whole discipline and all of the things that go into it. And so, we're on that mission to normalize women in tech and that workforce leadership role. So I'm super, super excited. And thank you so much, Tara, for joining me. Make sure that you guys go and visit The website is TaraRuttley.com, and connect with her and ask her different questions. We also have, again, we have a nonprofit. It is called Solid Rock Collaborative. And so we have the shirts here on Solid Rock Consulting's website. If you go to solidrockco.net/CCC, you'll find the shirts where you can get some of those shirts from. And Tara, I will be sending you a gift for sure. So we'll connect afterwards. But thank you all so much for for joining in. I appreciate you. My production team is coming in and telling me, hey, make sure you do this and make sure you do this, because I was like, listen, I'm super excited to talk to Tara, so I might forget everything except for the questions.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for your time and your wonderful questions.
Thank you so much, Tara. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, for those of you that are still watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Next week we will be here, same place, the same location. We will have Ebony Langston from T-Tech, and we'll be talking about diversity and inclusion, as well as what they're doing over at T-Tech. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye guys.